Hola Team Bio! Okay, so today's screencast is going to seem a little bit out of left field, and that's really because it is. But unfortunately the weather has not been cooperating, and a lab that we normally do like 2 or 3 weeks from now, which is a flower dissection, a daffodil dissection lab, has been pushed up because all the daffodils have been blooming. But unfortunately, it's been snowing, and I'm worried that they're all going to die. So we are going to do our daffodil dissection tomorrow, and it's really not going to be you're not going to see any direct relationship between this and what we have been doing, but we're going to kind of cycle back to it as we move forward in the course. So, today's screencast is going to be a breakdown of the flower and fruit diagram so that you know the different pieces of the plant and you will be ready for the dissection tomorrow. So it's important to note that before we begin that flowers are actually the reproductive organs of a plant, and the fruit actually develops out of the fertilized flower. Fertilized flower, hard to say. And you'll see that in the screencast today. So, if you go into your homework folder, you'll find a fruit and flower schematic that I'm going to import in this video. You can also draw exactly everything that you see, but it might be easier to go download the schematic, put it into your note, and label it from there. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so here is the diagram that's located in your homework folder, imported into my Viddle, and I'm going to talk about some of the different structures here. Before I begin though, important to note that this is the structure of angiosperms. Angiosperms is another way to say flowering plant. So all plants reproduce, but not all plants reproduce by using flowers. So angiosperms are a specific type of plant, flowering plants. Okay, so let's start with the flower, because the flower actually comes first in the process of reproduction. And I guess start with number 1 down here at the bottom. So number 1, structure 1 down here, these are called sepals. So structure 1, sepals. Sepals are protective coverings that open up and release the flower. Yeah, a lot of people peel them off when they have flowers on display. Number 2 is relatively obvious, that those are the petals. So sepals are a protective covering for the petals, and petals are often brightly colored, and the reason for this coloration is to attract pollinators. So pollinators are going to move pollen from one flower to another, hopefully from one plant to another plant, and it causes fertilization and mixing up of genes, so ultimately genetic diversity. So it's important for plants to attract pollinators so that their pollen can be disseminated among lots of different plants. And the color of the flower is partially how plants do this. Okay, so next we jump up to this part of the plant right here. Now this structure, is called the anther. And it makes a little bit more sense to jump from the anther to talking about number 8 right here, which are the grains of pollen. And the anther is actually what produces the pollen. So these are pollen grains. And then from the anther, what is holding up the anther right here is called the filament. And together, the anther and the filament make up the male reproductive part of the flower. And together, these are called the stamen. So that's the male reproductive organ within the flower. The next piece is the female reproductive organ. So number 5 right here is called the style. Number 6 is the ovary. So right here, ovary of the plant. And this is kind of poorly done, but number 9 right here, where the pollen lands, up here is called the stigma. Oops. And it's the stigma, style, and ovary together that make up the female structure, which is called the carpel. C-A-R-P-L-E, carpel there. Okay, and also included, I guess, in this structure is the ovule itself. So the ovule, number 7, is what is going to hold the developing embryo eventually. Okay, so that is the flower. Now the flower, once it's fertilized, and we're going to talk about the mechanism of fertilization tomorrow in class, the pollen essentially drops off what are going to be sperm, which are then going to go on and fertilize the egg, which is located within the ovule. And it's going to develop into a fruit. So if we look here, we'll see that some sections that we've already labeled are already in the plant. So number 1, the sepals are going to be down here. 2, the petals are going to kind of fall away and turn brown, but they'll still be present. And number 6, which was the ovary of the flower, develops into the tissue of the fruit. So for example, when you eat an apple, you are mostly eating, or you are eating, what was plant ovary. So the only new numbers we have to label here are 10, 11, and 12. So let's start with number 10. So this entire structure right here, so this is the ovary, this becomes the fruit. Here is the seed, and number 10 is the seed coat. Oops. Inside the seed coat are 2 things. The first thing is the developing embryo, which is what looks like this little tree here. And then surrounding the embryo is what's called the endosperm. And the endosperm is going to be the food for the developing plant once the seed germinates. So 11, yep, that's right, 11 is the endosperm. And 12 is the embryo. And that is it for the structure of the fruit and the flower. I'm just going to throw in one more image here. Okay, so here's a nice kind of time lapse that shows you the development of a tomato from its immature stages. So we start with the bud here. You can see the sepals over the flower protecting it. They open up. Then we get the mature flower. The petals are in here. Both the male and female reproductive organs are in here. Then the flower is fertilized, and from the ovary down here, the fruit starts to grow, and yada 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 until we have this mature fruit right here, which is going to contain a bunch of seeds. Okay, that is all for today, and I will see you tomorrow.